Start recording. That was hilarious. That's wow. Hang on.
It made it even funnier when it stopped working for you. Then you were troubleshooting, nothing worked. I started troubleshooting, and then it stopped working for me. Like trying to fix the problem made the problem worse.
That it transferred over. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. Hold on a second. Wow. All right. So yeah, I think we were on the topic of Joker. Like I didn't want to get too far into that, but yeah, that was
Oh yeah,
yeah, like
good movie overall. I want to see it again.
same here. Did I tell you I saw The Lighthouse?
You did not tell me that. I need to see the lighthouse. How'd
Def
you like it?
Definitely see it. It was really good. Again, I'd really need to see it again. Like there's so much I've read online about Joker, and same goes for The Lighthouse. Like a lot of people have like their interpretations. A lot of people like have brought forth different things, and it's just like I remember watching it. I really liked what I saw. It was similar to The Witch, but it's like it's the same director. It's Robert Eggers, and his movies are really rich. So at least that
Right.
and The Witch. So I need to give it another shot, but I really liked it. It was awesome. Oh, and I
Cool.
saw Parasite from Bong Joon Ho. That was
I've heard that's good. How is that?
that was solid. Yeah. Like it's so funny. Like it's bizarre. Like I remember describing this. I watched it with Eduardo, and I said it almost reminded me of like a Shakespearean story.
Huh.
Shakespeare's plays kind of often begin a little bit like absurdly, like they have characters who are like almost like buffoons, and then slowly
Right.
things begin to like escalate, and like eventually it just becomes like a complete tragedy at the end. That's what it felt like. It
Yeah.
felt like things slowly spiraled out of control. They go from very funny, very like absurd to like almost horrifying at the end. So I dug it though. It
That's
was really
cool.
good. Yeah.
Awesome.
There's been some good stuff released as of late. Like the early parts, man, it was not a fun year, but like there's been some really good movies recently.
Yeah. No, I definitely would like to jump back into the hoop. It's a bummer though. I don't have you to go see movies anymore, so I pretty much am going to see movies alone now.
Yeah, same here, man. I'm actually lucky I found Eduardo, who's in the same realm, just seeing movies and wants to talk at the end. So yeah, uh, yeah. All right. Did you want to just jump into Blair Witch now?
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I'm glad you recommended this because I think it's been at least 2, maybe even 3 years since I sat down and watched the whole thing beginning to end.
Yeah, I remember I watched it last year for the first time. Like I was yeah, that's right. I was making like a lot of written reviews, and then I made a series for Halloween, and like this is one that I threw in there. I think I watched the 2016 movie as well. So I
Mhm.
I'll never forget when you told me the concept. Like I remember when you were watching a lot of horror movies, like you watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and like The Shining, like the Ring. You were kind of on a horror binge, and I remember seeing the Blair Witch Project on like the
Right.
ones from Blockbuster that you selected, and I remember you just told me the concept. Like you just told me what the basic plot is, which is like three kids go into the woods, and then they can't get out. They're like
Yeah.
seeing the same rocks, the same logs pass by, and they're stuck in there for like weeks, and it's like that's freaking scary. I remember afterwards I actually went to a camp with the Boy Scout troop, and
Uh huh.
it was one of the more remote ones, and like our patrol actually went like toward like to a campsite which is actually more deep in the woods. That was where our patrol like went every year when we went to that particular campsite. I remember feeling a little bit like "Ooh," when we were hiking in and camping for the first night, because like just that concept alone, I was like that it's it's scary in and of itself, and like that's what I think is probably
Yeah.
the best part of the movie, is just how simple it is. Like it's not a difficult movie to grasp. It feels close to home. So
Yeah. No. What was interesting is after you recommended it and I sat down and watched the movie, I decided in my head, okay, I'm going to set my nostalgia aside. I'm going to set the fact that this was like an important movie for me to watch, and it was a movie that I really enjoyed, and I've sort of preached the greatness of this movie, and I just like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna watch it as a movie, and I'm just gonna judge it on those terms. And I was really surprised how well it stood up for me.
Hmm.
Like I remember when I first watched it, how like I think when I was younger, like the incessant cursing and like just kind of the
Yeah.
laid back nature of the characters almost seemed a little goofy at the time. But I was surprised how much time the movie spends with those characters and spends with them in ways that I don't think many other horror films do. Like you
No.
get moments that are very sad. You get moments that are funny. You get moments where you're just sitting with the characters, and there's a moment towards the end of the movie, especially where Mike is like just sitting on the ground, rocking back and
Yeah.
forth. And it's at this moment when like Heather just sits down next to him and they just sort of hold each other that you realize they can't get out and they
Yeah.
know it.
Ex-
They're gonna die in the woods.
that is one of the scenes like for me that's the thing that stood out like both times that I watched it like last year and like obviously this week is just like I the acting is really good in the movie. Like it's kind of surprising. Like you just there's not much they have to do, but like you feel what they're feeling. Like exactly as you described. Like they slowly begin to realize that like they're in denial at first, and then as time goes on, they just start freaking out. Like when Mike is just
Mm-hmm.
yelling help, and exactly that scene where they're just comforting each other. It's like there's so many scenes between them where like the friction feels real. You're like these are people who are arguing and just trying to stay sane in a really bad situation. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah, it's
was it
It's I just think that it's surprising how well it works
yeah
despite its discipline. Like its discipline is essentially you have three actors and they are the cinematographers, the performers, the cameramen, like everything. They are essentially a self comprised film crew
yeah
doing everything. And I think what was interesting is my DVD immediately after the credits rolled shifted over into this documentary that they had shot for the movie called Curse of the Blair Witch, and it's essentially like a documentary with like fake news footage and information like interviews with like family members of Mike. And it was interesting because to watch that right after watching the movie, it really set in my mind how the directors really tried to sell this as a real thing. Like they made a documentary for the movie. And I think what I read was initially they planned on their movie incorporating the documentary footage while shifting back to the found footage. And it was only after they were finished that they decided that it was going to make more sense to just use the found footage as the film, and then you could release the documentary separate. So I was really impressed by it, and I was happy that even though I decided, okay, I'm not gonna go into this with my nostalgia goggles, that the movie stood on its own 2 feet without it.
yeah. Did I ever tell you that Roger Ebert actually gave it a 4 out of 4?
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Like his review is actually pretty good. Like he talks about like the concept and just like how like I think he praised the acting. I think that's one of the key things which he thought was great. Is like, and it's funny. It's like there's it's yeah. Like one of the things which actually stood out to me this time was the time you spend at the beginning of the movie. Like you'd imagine that would be like one of the worst parts is when they're not in the woods. Like you'd almost want to start at the
Mm-hmm.
car. But I think that's actually one of the best parts of it. Like they got decent people who are like just people who are supposed to play townsfolk to like kind of sell the idea that this is like an urban legend and like
Right.
kind of show that like people don't really believe in it. People have heard of it, but they don't believe like a lot of this stuff is true. I'm like I think that's one of the parts that like gets you into the movie when you're like, wow, this is how people are imagining this as all. So yeah.
Yeah. It's what's great is that it takes characters that in any other movie would just be essentially cardboard cutouts, and it spends enough time with them that you care about them. And when things start to go bad, even in minor ways, like even in ways that aren't necessarily like immediately threatening, like you have like the piles of rocks outside their tent.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's weird. And then you have the sounds of like cracking wood and like and even just like simple things like the fact that they can't seem to get out of the woods. And initially it seems like it's because Heather's leading them in the wrong direction or they're just not reading the map right. But like there's a lot of small, scary stuff that happens. And it really is rooted in the fact that I care about these three characters.
Hmm.
And much of the conflict is between themselves and not necessarily with anything external. Like there is no like grand reveal of the witch. There's no big moment where it's like, okay, this is the bad guy we're fighting. Like for the most part, they're fighting themselves.
Exactly. And, that's the other thing which I love about it is like, it's pretty clear that like there was a witch. Like it's freaking they leave it that way, but at the same time, like they don't show it at the end, and you're like, this really could be. They just got lost and died. And like one of the things
Right.
with there is Josh like disappearing. Like they just suggest that he just might have run off, and he might have just lost his
Right.
mind. Like there's they don't give you an easy way out. This is what I've said kind of about The Shining and movies like that, like where it's like it's best when you leave the monster hidden and you don't give the audience like the relief of a jump scare or like a or an attack. It's like if you leave stuff mysterious, like it can be a lot scarier. Yeah, and
Right. And I mean, one of the cool things is there's no victory. Like, I
no,
mean, it's assumed pretty clearly that the characters at the end have died. And in The Shining, like even though two characters get away, it's not like a victory. Like the
no,
house is still there, the ghosts are still there. Like that's a nice way to leave a horror film. Like, okay, maybe you got away, maybe you didn't, but the whatever set these terrible events in motion is still there, and that hasn't changed.
yeah. Honestly, that was one of the things which kind of took me out of Blair Witch. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, but you
No, I think we
you
should. It's a worthwhile conversation.
you like that movie overall, right? Like you appreciate it more, like
Let me clarify my stance. I like the fact that at least for the two main characters, I feel like they're developed enough that I like them and that I care for them in a similar way to the way I care about the characters in Blair Witch. However, I think most of the characters in that movie are not developed enough to get out of like 80s cannon fodder territory.
exactly. Like
And as such, I would say it makes the second act of that movie a bit of a rough sit compared to the first and the third acts.
yeah, like there's so many characters. I don't even remember. It's like 6 or 7 or 8 or
Yeah.
something like that. It's a lot.
And who are the only characters you remember from that?
Like I remember the freaking crazy people they go with because they were crazy and like working with the
Right.
witch. Spoilers. And I and I remember the girl who freaking got sick. I was I don't remember
Right.
them based on personality or like moments with them. I just remember like traits and like exactly what you said. Like that's the sign of like a troped horror like 80s film rather than like something like the Blair Witch Project. I don't know. As
Right.
yeah, I just
No,
that
it's frustrating because I like some of the production of that movie, but I think it really falls apart because it's funny. Do you remember Mr. Moat from Austin?
oh yeah.
I was talking to him about Twin Peaks because he says he really loves the '90s show. Like that's one of his favorite television series. And I was asking him if he had seen the new series, like Twin Peaks: The Return. And he answered. His answer was really interesting. He said like, "Yeah, I have, but it's a little too ginned up for me." Like essentially describing the fact that it kind of like kicked into high gear in the new season. And I like Twin Peaks: The Return, but I think I understand how he feels when I watch Blair Witch Project and then I watch Blair Witch. Blair Witch feels ginned up. It feels
Yeah.
like it goes from 0 to 100 miles an hour about maybe 30 minutes in,
And
and it
like,
never really lets up.
no, they just keep it going. Like I think Adam Weingart described it like he wanted, like the Blair Witch Project is about being lost in the woods, and he wanted like to kind of have the idea of like someone being chased through the woods. And I'm like,
Right,
in during scenes it works, but I'm like, I didn't like how over the top they went. Like a tree falls down and like crushes a guy, like pins him down. It's like, ah! And it's like
right,
it doesn't feel subtle. Like I mean, I'm fine with them like showing creatures in the woods because they did that. Like maybe they went a little overkill, but I'm fine. They were supposed to show the witch instead of this movie actually. Like in the scene with the kids in the woods, like
right,
the voices and like the people pushing on the tent. Like they were actually supposed to show it, and they didn't. Like that was an
right.
accident. So it's like it. I'm fine with some of the things that they decided to do, but like you said, it's just they push it a little too hard, and I think it's a concept which is better left to be reserved. So, and again,
Yeah,
like
they
I
don't let scenes breathe.
no, especially after the second act, like I that's why the first act for
Yeah,
me is my favorite part. Like when they're just getting set up with the technology, because I was like, you're introducing like stuff like HD cameras, and it's like this is kind of neat, all the ideas they had, but yeah.
right.
I don't know, to a degree
Yeah,
that movie just
it's a
lost me.
bummer. Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. I think that I don't know. It's do you remember that scene with the stickmen in Blair Witch Project when they first come across the stickmen hanging?
Yeah, yeah,
That's like one of the creepiest scenes in that movie. Like, and even though there's not a ton of them, like there's maybe like 20 of them maybe in the trees.
yeah,
It just feels like they're everywhere. The way it's shot.
yeah, yeah,
And then I remember in Blair Witch, there's a scene where there's probably like 50 of them,
yeah.
like closely together. They're all these different shapes. And there was no real build up to that moment. Like
No,
in
they just stumble upon it. They're just like, oh my gosh,
right.
and then she
Whereas in Blair
snaps
Witch
one in.
Project,
It's like,
oh yeah, that for me is when the movie loses me. When she snaps it, kills one of the girls, like at that point just like stops feeling real. It
yeah,
starts to feel like a ride.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's I don't know. I don't want to trash that movie too much because I
no,
like parts of it, but I definitely think that it pales in comparison to the original to the Blair Witch Project. It's amazing just how I loved if you have time, look up Stephen King. He had a great quote on the movie, um, and he said something to the effect of, "Do you know what's great about Blair Witch? It feels real. The characters feel real. Like the situations feel real. Like he says that's like the thing that makes that movie scary. Everything feels very real, and there's not a whole lot that feels outside of possibility."
yeah, like pretty much any horror movie like has like something. Like you're like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Psycho, like they come close. You're like this almost feels tangible, but still you can put it aside to fiction. You're like this still doesn't quite feel like something which could actually happen. Like I said, this movie just the idea of being lost in the woods. You're like this. They don't show the witch, and everything in the film feels tangible. Like even some of the more extreme stuff with like the kids laughing in the woods and the house at the end. Like it feels tangible. So yeah.
Right. Just a quick question: what was the scene that scared you the most?
Um, that scared me the most.
Or got under your skin the most? Like, what's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
scene that
yeah.
left?
It might have been the teeth in the cloth, like after
Oh
Josh
yeah, that was
disappears.
bad.
Like that is almost like the build up. Like the house is almost just like the resolution. That's where kind of the story ends. But I'm like that scene for me was like just almost like the most horrifying thing you see in the movie, where you like
Right.
it's hard to question it, and like Heather's reaction is just like, oh my gosh, and when she's washing her hands in the creek, it's like, oh my gosh, you got to be joking me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
I
scene
think
was.
that that's pretty bad. I remember I think it was there's really two scenes that really creep me out the most. It's there's one where they wake up in the and they hear children giggling outside. That got under my skin.
Yeah,
Like it's like holy crap! Like of all the things you don't want to hear in the middle of the woods in like the pitch black of night, it's like children giggling.
yeah,
And then I think the next scene, which is similar to what you said, is the night before she finds the teeth when they hear Josh crying like a 5 year old in the woods.
yeah,
Like that was bad. Like I was like, okay, he's not even crying. He's like, oh, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's like what on earth is happening to him that he's making that.
yeah. That was like, those are the things, man. Is just when is the subtle stuff, like, yeah, like you know,
Right,
it's all tree branches at the beginning, or it's like something. They describe it as footsteps, but I always thought it sounded like something like cracking. It's like something going through the woods, and then after that, like they start hearing like
right.
voices. Yeah, those are the scenes that freaking get under the skin. So, and it's funny too. The other
Do
thing
you
that
think? Oh,
go
go
on,
ahead.
you go on
Do
first.
you think there's a witch? Do you think that like a witch like tangibly causes what happens in the movie?
I don't know about it being like a physical witch, but I feel like there was something manipulating them. Like that was the other thing which I didn't like that Blair Witch did, is like it kind of introduced like the idea that like the witch almost manipulates like time and space while in there.
Right,
I'm like, I felt that was a little bit too over the top. I'm like, I feel it's something a little subtler than that, but like because I don't think they just got lost. I think that like they come back to the same log. I'm like, I don't think they were running around in circles. I think that they were being manipulated. So like
right.
I feel that something was happening. I don't know if it was a witch that was necessarily responsible, but I do feel like strings were being pulled. So
You know what's funny about this movie is I've never really taken to any of the purvey that fans give for how things happened. I think the one that I enjoy the is that Josh and Mike were in cahoots to murder Heather in the middle of the woods. Have you heard that?
no.
It's like there is no witch, and Josh and Mike essentially scheme to murder Heather in the woods, which makes zero sense to me
Yeah,
because
that
it's like okay, let's play that out logically. Like that might play until you get to the sounds in the woods, because at that point they need to be in cahoots with other people because they can't cause those sounds to be happening in the middle of the woods. And on top of that, like the tent gets attacked by something, and all three of the kids are in the tent. So I've seen that theory around, but what I wanted to say is that I actually read one theory that after I watched the movie a second time now that I thought was really good, which is that just like one of the stories that the kids learn over the course of making the documentary is the story of Rustin Parr, the guy who like lived outside of town in the 50s. He was a hermit, and he lured kids to his house and killed them. He would have like
yeah.
one stand in the corner and they'd kill the other one. I read a theory that was kind of interesting, which was that perhaps um, the witch doesn't really have like a whole lot of tangible power. Like there's a couple of stories that make it sound like maybe she dragged a girl into the water at one point in like the 1800s, but for the most part, she acts through other people. And maybe like what she did with Rustin, where she ultimately drove him to murder the kids. Maybe she was able to do something similar with Josh, like lure him away from the group like torture him, like maybe cause him to like pull his own teeth out. And maybe that actually is Josh at the end killing Mike and Heather under the
Yeah,
influence of the witch.
I'd buy
Because
that
like
a
that's
lot more.
actually a theory that makes sense within the stories, like the mythology that the movie tells about itself, as well as also being really scary. Like not just explaining why something happens, but explaining why it may have happened and making it scarier as well.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot better. Like the idea that it's the idea that it isn't like that there's nothing supernatural going on. I definitely think there was something like that, but almost manipulation. Because that was the other thing is like
Right.
Josh is like calling out for them and they can't figure out where he is at the end. And I'm like, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
You're like the whole thing. You're like there was teeth inside of the cloths. You're like, what? Why is he still out there? You're like, is that him? Like they say it can't be him, but it's like, yeah, makes you think.
Right.
Yeah, I like theories like that. I like when it's kind of simple, when it's like it's something which doesn't necessarily like change the entire narrative. It just kind of makes you think. It's like it introduces a possibility which could change what you think. But yeah, those are the
Yeah,
best
it
type of
doesn't
theories. Yeah,
like it's not explaining something away. It's enhancing what's already there.
yeah. I don't know. It's funny. I kind of put this together because I thought this would be a good one. Like I think that this is a really well made film, but it's like it's the there isn't much to talk about, man. It's just best to see it because it's like it's a concept movie which is just really effectively executed. So yeah, I was there much else you wanted to discuss or
I mean, the one thing that I was interested in doing is a little digging, and I found a book that a fan of the movie wrote over like a 5 year period.
are you
It
serious?
just dropped earlier this month, and it's on Amazon.
Seriously?
I don't remember the name of it, but if you just search like Blair Witch book on Amazon and like basically like filter it by like publishing date, I can maybe pull it up here while we're on here. But it was actually interesting because evidently this is like to get. Oh, I found it. It's by a guy named Matt Blazy. It's called 8 Days in the Woods: The Making of the Blair Witch Project. And watching the movie again made me want to learn about how they made the movie because I've heard a lot of like conjecture and like little bits of trivia that I'm betting are probably a little bit ginned up for publicity. And I'd actually be interested to read more about like how do they actually make the movie.
Yeah, I would totally get that. Holy crap! Wow.
Because I
Um,
honestly can't think about many movies this same feeling where it's like, oh, the actors are basically like the actors are shooting for a day. The directors maybe like review everything at the end of the day, and then like they give them like post-it notes of like notes for their characters for the next day. And like I can't think of many movies that kind of are that um, inventive and just seem like so free form. Like it doesn't even really seem like this movie had a script. I'm betting it didn't. Like it feels like this is like the actors just improvising a lot of the work within like certain parameters.
yeah, it's a fantastic movie. Like it's funny. Like I,
Yeah.
I remember I remember I made a review about the movie and I didn't give it like a grade or a rating, but I just gave it a recommendation because it's hard to like to judge the film the way like that you usually judge a movie just based on like cinematography, direction, or screenwriting. It's like because it's completely different from that. Like and it's different from like what found footage movies have become. Like they've kind of faded out of popularity. Like thank God. But like you
Right.
had the trend in like the late 2000s and early like 2010s where like just everyone was just making a found footage like documentary style film and like there's something about this movie which is just wholly unique and like it's partially concept and it's partially just like the way it's put together, but yeah, it's a really freaking scary movie. So
Yeah. No, it's I'm happy that the movie stands up. Um, so Yeah, it's funny. I feel like the best movies, you say, how many ways can I say this is a good movie? You should see it.
Exactly. I'm like I'm kind of stuck here. It's like there's not many things we can go down on. It's like I said, it's one of those things that you just got to watch it. It's a fantastic movie to see. It's that's really scary. So yeah, see
Yeah,
it. Yeah, anyone watching, man, see the Blair Witch Project if you haven't. It's a fantastic movie. So yeah.
yeah. It's
Uh,
funny. I was thinking about how we were comparing Blair Witch to Blair Witch Project and Doctor Sleep,
yeah.
like first like true sequel to The Shining. I
I'm,
hope
I'm
that's good.
I've got my fingers crossed, man. I'm like I trust Mike Flanagan, dude. He's a really good director, but I'm concerned. I've said this. The thing which I really like about the trailers is it doesn't look like he's trying to replicate Stanley Kubrick. Like you can see there's shots which are like similar to The Shining, but it doesn't look like they're trying to replicate the look of the Overlook Hotel or any of that. It looks like Mike Flanagan's direction. That's what I think is great. It's like
Right.
yeah. So I hope he makes it his own, man. I really think it has the potential to be good, but it's a little worrisome. So
Yeah. No, I'm hoping. Looks
yeah,
good.
yeah. All right.
Awesome, man.
I don't.
Glad we
Yeah,
definitely did this. It was good to see that movie again.
yeah. Great, kind of blast in the past, and yeah. Last note, like honestly, I think Stuckman said this in his review, and I've heard this a few times. The idea that like the hype is kind of what made this movie like a legend, but the film itself is a little bit lesser. Like knowing that it's not real. And I don't think that that
Hmm.
holds up. I'm like I think that this movie stands like it's fun to hear what people thought like when people really did think that the movie was real, but I think it stands like without it. It's yeah.
No, I think the best thing I can say about it is the movie works at being scary, and it works at having characters that I care about, which at the end of the day is what you want from any movie.
Hmm. Simplicity and good execution. So
Yeah. You know what's funny is like I was looking at the people involved in the movie have done since then, and what's funny is like I think the actor who played Mike initially he was like a movie before the movie before he got back into acting, and he ended up leaving the acting business, and he's been like doing a small business with his wife. I think the actress that played Heather grows medical marijuana now, and then the only like guy that's still doing acting is Josh. He's
yeah,
been like a TV actor for a while.
I saw him in Unsane for the Steven Soderbergh movie. He was
Oh,
pretty.
really?
Yeah, he played the stalker in that movie. He was pretty good in that. So movie,
Nice.
but yeah, it was cool. It was cool seeing him in that. So yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, it's funny how like nobody in that movie really was stars,
yeah.
but
Same with the
they all like went
directors.
on to be successful. Yeah, like even the director.
Just found their own
I mean,
place.
I don't want to say like I don't want to. I feel like that's sort of a. I feel like I'm setting up a situation where it's like either you're Martin Scorsese or you're nothing in the filmmaking business. But they all just like went on to just they were all moderately successful in whatever ways they wanted to be, um, and they always have this to like look back on as like, hey, we put together something that was just kind of perfect at the right time that came out.
Hmm. All right. Well, feel like we're kind of dragging out the conclusion here, but yeah,
Yeah,
this was fun to do. I'm glad we could rewatch this. So yeah,
yeah,
see the Blair Witch
awesome.
Project, and thank you guys for watching, and happy Halloween. So
Happy Halloween.
all right, see ya.